Again to the Brendan Bass stage this afternoon. I'm here with Dom and Martin from 10,000 House. Thank you guys. With a very catchy session name, Das Size Metre. So before we answer that, and if you guys have any question to that, you can use Slido. So just to ask any questions, so grab your phone to capture the QR code or go to slido.com. with the event code ETL19. We're going to do a Q&A by the end of the session, and we're going to answer your questions there using Slido. So without any further ado, I'm going to give a word to Martin. Thank you, guys.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. Those with headphones can hear all right? Perfect. Oh. Ruined. Okay, bit of a technical hitch there. So, we're here to do a presentation title called Does Size Matter? And a few things before we start of what you're not going to see in this presentation. So first of all, you're not going to see any inspirational quotes from business leaders, sporting legends, or historical figures. We're also not going to have any memes of cats jumping around or anything like that for a small chuckle. No videos of animals on laptops. And actually, despite the title, no innuendos at all. And last of all, also no technology. We're here to tell you about a project we ran where we found the right technical solution for our client as a result of some in-depth thinking and learning. Before I start, this is who we are. You can probably work out which one is which, but we're 10,000 Hours and we're an insight-led agency, and we produce memorable and momentous creative experiences and events. Along the bottom, if you want to get in touch or follow us at all, you can do that afterwards, but do come and see us if there are any more questions that don't get answered. So how did it all start, our project? It started with this word, which was help. We had a client pick up the phone to us. Our client is based in the tobacco industry, but they're actually working in the research and development area of tobacco. So they're actually moving towards a technical industry, a technology industry. And they had bought a space at an exhibition taking place in Poland, a very humble and small space, 3 square meters by 2, very similar to what you see here. But over the weekend, their CEO had announced that 4 new products were coming to market, and they'd come to market quicker than they expected. So the CEO wanted to make a bit of a splash at this event. Not only that, the CEO had set a few challenges as well along the way. And our client rang us and just shouted help down the phone. Can we come up with a creative solution of how we might do this for them? So we went and saw our client and we asked them various questions and what challenges they faced. The first one was about the competitor. So their biggest competitor was actually at the same exhibition, but their biggest competitor also has big budgets. And with big budgets, you're able to build big exhibition stands. They effectively, if I can put an analogy around it, on one side of the exhibition hall was Willy Wonka's chocolate factory with a lovely chocolate-smelling, glistening building on one side. And they were a very humble but innovative and delightful cookie maker on the other side. So the real big challenge was, how are we going to get people to come to their stand when they're going to be attracted by the glistening lights and the big building? Another challenge was presence. The CEO was really keen that people that attended this exhibition would go away remembering our client name and remembering the great innovative work that they were doing. Along with that, the awareness. CEO was very keen to put down the challenge of making people aware of the research and development and the amount of time and effort that's going in to create these products. And of course, they wanted to showcase the products. The products are all about trying to move smokers onto e-cigarettes in order to reduce the amount of smoking in the world generally. So they wanted to showcase these innovative products and how they work internally. And what we didn't know at the time, but it was only 4 weeks away, so we had 4 weeks to come up with a solution in order to address all of these challenges. So we sat there and our client said to us, so what's the solution? And now, we might have beards, but we're not wizards. We couldn't actually sit there and pull a trick out of our sleeve to say, this is what you need to do. So we said to our client, if you don't mind, can we have a little bit of time and think about what we might come up with as a solution for you? So we decided to think, what approach are we going to take? Now, it would have been very easy as an agency to go into our cupboard of tricks and tools with engagement tactics and event technology and just say, here is your solution, this is what we think you should do. But that just would have been a short-term fix and actually wouldn't have enabled us to grow the relationship with the client. So we decided we had to do a whole bunch of insight around this. First of all, we had to do the research around the products. So what are these products doing? What's the innovation that sits behind the products? Why will people be interested in them? And actually, what size are they? How much space do you need to display these products as well? Then we did a little bit of research into the competitor. We knew they had a big stand. I've mentioned Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. This stand was of a considerable size, but we wanted to understand, why are they there? What messaging are they giving out while they're there? And what's the one thing they're not mentioning that our client is actually mentioning? We then researched the show. The show's been going for a number of years. How big was the show? Is it growing year on year? Who are the audience? What are the audience wanting to hear when they come to the show? And actually, how big is the exhibition? This is sensitive, isn't it? And then we looked at the audience. This was a really, really important part for us. And when we started to look into this more, it really started to direct where our thinking was going. So it was a broad range of people. The audience was made up of researchers, academics, government officials, politicians, consumers, and the press. A broad range of people who will be attending, all with different reasons to attend. And then we looked at the trends. We looked at trends in exhibitions, we looked at trends in people behaviour and engagement behaviour, and we looked at trends in event technology that people are using on stands. But we had all of this insight after doing this and bits of market research, but we had to decide, it got us thinking, we had to decide how are we going to approach this and how are we going to get the right solution. So we decided we had to find the gap. Now, a lot of people will have seen a diagram like this. It's pretty self-explanatory what happens. But we looked at what the audience wanted to hear, we looked at what the client had that was innovative and wanted to promote, and we looked at what the competitor was talking about, and we found that small, tiny gap which gave us an idea which would then lead to a solution for the client. But we also had to incorporate into that solution, how do we divert the eyes? I've mentioned that the client had a really massive stand across the hallway. It was Willy Wonka's chocolate factory compared to the in-house cookie maker that was going on. How are we going to make sure people weren't attracted to the shiny lights and they came to hear what was being said? And here's our solution, which Dom's going to tell you about.
Okay, hi everyone. Take the clicker. Be careful of the clicker. Okay, so Martin's given you really good insight as to how we approach this problem. I'm going to introduce you to the solution. I think one of the really important things to remind you of is the pain point that our client really felt around the proximity of their competitor and how big a task it was going to be to divert the eyes from the competitor stand to ours. The competitor had simulators and machines and flashing lights, and on a 3 metre by 2 metre stand space, we simply didn't have the room to be able to compete on that kind of technical level. But actually, that wasn't the right approach. For us, this was very much about creating an immersion for attendees to really kind of learn to come inside and to experience the products, for attendees to be able to explore and understand how the products worked, particularly as this was an event that was very much focused on how technology is creating a safer nicotine product for consumers. We absolutely wanted to be the first agency to claim, honey, we shrunk the attendees. But when you can't do that for obvious reasons, we have to have a look at what's next. And it's at that point that we started to explore the technology that exists, and particularly the event technology that exists. We looked at virtual reality. We started to kind of look at and understand how attendees use their own devices at trade show events, how they might look to use apps, and that led us towards an augmented reality kind of solution, and that started to grow some traction. And it was actually when we understood how augmented or mixed reality worked, we came across the Microsoft Hololens product. Now, quick show of hands, who's heard of or seen Microsoft Hololens? Okay, about a quarter. That's a good start.
How'd you get a quarter?
Now, before we could run away with Microsoft HoloLens, we needed to explain to our client team what this product was. We needed to give them the reassurance that it was the right product for use and that we'd be engaging and diverting the eyes. So the first approach that we took was to write a report. And we wanted to use that opportunity to explain to the client why this technology was right for them. This was very much about how is this going to divert the eyes? How is this going to create that attraction and that intrigue from the attendees? This was very much about using our client's presence to pique that inquisitiveness. Back to the awareness, how do we help the client by raising their awareness at the event? This was very much about creating a very kind of new and very positive technology experience for attendees, then to go away and spread the word throughout the entire trade show. We also had the opportunity with one of our clients' senior executives who was using one of their sponsored speaking opportunities, and we encouraged them to actually walk onto stage using their Microsoft Hololens headset and then to be able to deliver that experience live on stage. And of course, as part of our report, it was about how are we going to be able to implement this very complex project in an incredibly short amount of time. As Martin mentioned, we had 4 weeks from very beginning to very end. And we were able to settle nerves about the particular choice of technology, as well as this is how we design the program and this is how we implement this in a very short space of time. Let's go. That couldn't have been any slower, could it? So we get to a point where we've settled all the nerves around this being a particularly clever piece of technology. We've introduced Microsoft HoloLens and how that's going to work. We now have a very excited client team who are very keen for us to make a move and to get the project off and running. And we're excited to do so. But as with everything, it never runs particularly smoothly. So at this stage, we encounter what we call our first ouch. Ouch number 1. Now, we'd been looking at 4 gloriously produced, glossy product images from our client, only to learn that actually only 2 of the products existed and had come to market. The other 2 products were still effectively on the design drawing board and hadn't actually come to market. And actually part of our event experience in Poland was to launch these new products. So that presented us with a problem. We had 2 products on our desk, but 2 were still very much blueprint. That then leads neatly into ouch number 2. With our particular products, beautifully designed and manufactured as they were, they are completely sealed units, in almost exactly the same way that the mobile phones in your pockets are. And we needed to get inside them. We needed to be able to fully immerse our attendees in the component pieces inside those products, which made it very difficult for us to access without the use of a hammer, which was kind of counterintuitive to what we were trying to achieve. And so as a result of that, and particularly having 2 of our 4 products as blueprints only, that meant that we needed to spend some time with the research and development teams to really kind of get inside and more clinically understand the component pieces that were in the inside. We actually spent some time at the R&D facility with the engineers and with the scientists who very carefully deconstructed the products for us, that we were able then to take the individual components and 3D scan them in order to be able to recreate those components as 3D models. And when we had our component pieces, when we'd created our 3D models, as we'd created the storyboards that laid out the entire engagement experience, as we had written the scripts and created the written content that would be part of the education piece, we'd even produced our first prototype, which we developed with our client marketing teams, with the R&D teams. We were then introduced to their legal and compliance teams, who realized at this point that actually the product or the experience was giving away too much detail. That we'd been able to take all of the attendees and bring them right inside the products and potentially sharing some of that intellectual property that in a public space shouldn't be shared. And of course, at this stage, we're about 10 days now away from being live halfway across Europe and Poland. So that literally meant going back to the drawing board. And we had a task then to remodel some of the component pieces, to take out some of the component pieces that we'd originally written about and that we were sharing, and essentially completely restart that process with just a week and a half to go. So, if we could press play, please, Adam. This is not our final version. This is the development solution. We can't share the final version with you, but what this shows is how we are able to immerse our attendees in our customers, in our clients' products. Microsoft Hololens, if you haven't experienced it, is the opposite of virtual reality. Virtual reality puts you in an environment within which you are surrounded. With Microsoft HoloLens augmenting onto glass, this now puts you on the outside of something looking in. One of the great tactics around how do you divert the eyes is very simply the gesture that Microsoft HoloLens uses to enable your user to interact with the content itself. So you can imagine as you walk past a 3 meter by 2 meter stand space with a number of human beings all pincering like crabs, that creates the inquisitiveness, and that created the interest and the engagement. As you can see, the users are in full control of being able to open and close, deconstruct elements of this particular product. This was all supported with a narration that was pumped into the user's ears as well, that gave you an audio commentary alongside each of these experiences. Martin, let me hand it back to you.
You may, yes. I might need that. Okay. Okay, it's part of the presentation when we come to outcomes, and normally people pop up some figures like 3,000% increase in attendance at a stand, or 97.2461 positive feedback in engagement. We haven't got any of that because our client previously had not measured their activity at the event. What we do have, though, is a glowing reference from a client for what we managed to achieve. But the really important part of this, and when I mentioned earlier about we could have had a short-term fix by taking something off the shelf, what we've just created there, the 4 products, and you only saw a prototype of 1, has now been rolled out globally across their organization. And we've had activations in North and South America, Asia, and other events at Europe. So it's a hugely successful project for our client, but also demonstrated that the investment they made has now paid itself off in abundance across various different activations. So what did we learn? Again, it's the part of the presentation where a lot of people say, I will tell you about the learnings, but contact us and get in touch and we can sell to you and you can do all of that. We're not going to do that. We're going to tell you what we learned as we were going along. Stupid questions. Bit of a strange sentence, but stupid questions are brilliant. The stupider the question, the better response you get in what you are doing. I don't even know if stupid is a word, but you get what I'm trying to say. Dom and I knew nothing about the tobacco industry when we went into this, and we certainly knew nothing about the e-cigarettes and the technology of what goes behind it. But the amount of detailed questions we asked, no matter how simple or how technical they were, that allowed us to get the insights that enabled us to make the creative solution for the client. Secondly, be nosy. Don't be afraid to go and see what competitors are doing. Go and see what else is happening out there in the environment. The more you can find out, and don't be shy about doing it, and there are correct ways of doing it, and staring up at people's bedroom windows is probably not the right way to go out being nosy, but if you can find out as much information as you can, you will get to the right solution in the end. But the really important part is find the gap first. The little gap we showed you in the Venn diagram, if you find that gap and then you'll come to the solution. Don't go and find the solution and re-engineer the process back for your clients. If you don't find the gap, you'll end up just repurposing something that isn't fit for purpose. So we think that size does not matter, and we are able to take on the big boys at an exhibition stand with what was going on. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We have some questions from the audience, and if you still have any more, feel free to ask them at slido.com with the event code ETL19. We're at the Brandon Bus stage. So I'll start with a top question. So essentially, we're talking about taking down the big boys.
Yeah.
And there's also a budget issue, so how do you make the most out of a tiny budget compared to the big players?
Dom would be perfectly placed to answer this on the fact he spends no money in his personal life, so it should be quite good.
No, It's a great question, actually, and that was part of the purpose of writing the report that we talked about when we came back to our client, was acknowledging that this was going to be a much bigger investment than they'd originally considered. Very much with exhibitions, it's always about infrastructure and it's about how something looks, and this just wasn't part of that model anymore. So we knew that this was going to be a big investment on their part, something that they hadn't necessarily budgeted for, but we knew it was exactly the right solution. And our report was very much about, this is the right technology because it addresses all of your business objectives. And that helped us. Admittedly, there was some compromise between what the true budget was against what they were prepared to spend. But I think actually that common sense approach was critically important there.
Absolutely, and by doing that, you created a lot of traction on the stand. You showed that with hand gestures. Is it possible to measure ROI on this kind of thing?
Mark?
Is it possible? Yes, of course it is. But actually, you've got to set your criteria with the clients in the first place about what your measurement is based on. So everyone does talk about ROI, and I absolutely get it. But on this occasion, as we had said, the CEO had put out some pretty specific challenges around awareness, around presence, and showcasing products. So we started to put measurement in place around the return on the experience, the return on the engagement. But really importantly on this one, we had a return on reputation, and not a lot of people are doing that. So on the stand, the conversations they were having, they were asking people what they were going to do following their interaction on this stand. And they gained some really great insight on their reputation. So whilst I can't tell you about the return on investment, what I can say is for a one-off expenditure for the 4 product experiences, they've now rolled this out globally. So for them, it's been a fantastic return on investment.
Thank you. And maybe to wrap up, you came up with some pretty innovative idea over there. What do you do actually? How do you research trends in the industry to make sure you stay ahead of the curve?
We're all here at Event Tech Live now. We're both avid readers, but I can't tell you the sort of publications Dom reads. But we do keep ahead of the trends. We're constantly reading information. We are at events. We have a lot of conversations with a lot of different industries. We don't just stay in the events industry that's going on and trends. And actually, we have clients from a broad range of different industries, ranging from IT to the tobacco industry, to internet services. There's a lot of good and best practice that's going on and a lot of bad practice that's going on. And we just take all of that. That's how we research what's going on. But we are constantly looking for that next nugget that will put us ahead of the competition.
I think just a final point that I want to make on that is that you should always be curious about the technology that is being shared with you by, event technology leaders. The technology solutions that are put before you, particularly within our industry press, offer a very, very quick and easy understanding of how to use that technology. But we always try and look at how we might be able to stretch that, how we might be able to take that out of its kind of original environment and try and make it more valuable and more meaningful for our clients. And that's exactly as we did with Microsoft HoloLens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin.
Cheers.